Good morning, everybody. How are you all today? It's loud. Good. I probably don't even need this, do I? We're kind of like closer-knit community this morning, which is all right. I'm grateful you're here. I don't know what's going on with everybody's lives to why you're here, but hopefully you're just here to learn a couple of skills, to learn a little bit on how to better use technology in the home. So we have some research that we want to share with you guys. We have some things that we want to put out there for everybody that will hopefully help your parenting experience. And so this morning we're going to cut through about three main areas about technology. We're going to kind of cover three areas. I'll turn my thing off. The good, we're going to cover the bad, and not the ugly, but some strategies that hopefully will help you in the home. So, it's important to remember that a lot of technology is very good, and it's become very, very helpful to our way of life. And at the same time, sometimes when used out of its proper place, technology can contribute to some negative aspects, especially in our children's lives. And then lastly, just some strategies to help make our homes more tech-savvy, screen-savvy, healthier places. And I think that all of us would agree that technology presents some pretty unique situations for parents, right? And they're not always pleasant ones, or they don't always have simple answers. When you're, as a parent, when you're having problems with a kid, especially speaking as a father of a one-year-old, you can always go to your parents, right, or good old grandma and grandpa, and ask them, hey, when I wouldn't sleep at night, what did you do? And it goes with age, too. Okay, when they were 12-year-old, when I was 12, or when my sister was 12, because I saw it all the time, right, and she was talking back to you, what did you do to kind of get a handle on that? You can always go back and ask your parents or your grandparents, and wisdom is passed down, especially through something as complex and personal as parenting. But we don't have that option with technology, right? Especially because, it's come in literally so much technology has come in about one lifetime. And they didn't exist back when your grandparents were raising your parents, or when some of you were even raising your kids. A lot of what's out there, if you're a grandparent, isn't here. What's here today wasn't there back then. And so that's a major part of what we're trying to address this morning, is the fact that technology has advanced quicker than we've been able to build wisdom around it, okay? Because we have a lot of wisdom about things, and then it gets passed down sometimes in wives' tales, sometimes in just normal, in classes, like when you have to take a driving class. There's wisdom around just about every aspect in life. But just before we can build wisdom around a piece of technology, it's obsolete, and we're going to a new one, right? So I think about when I was a kid, I had a Game Boy. Anybody have the good old-fashioned Game Boys, or had kids who had a Game Boy? They still have them, right? And so it was black and white, and it was normal, and I would play Pokemon or something like that, and there wasn't hardly any problems with it. And so outside of maybe just wanting my attention, there wasn't a ton of rules and restrictions about the Game Boy back when I was a kid. And yet by the time I was a high school senior, I didn't have one, but my brothers had what was called a Game Boy DS. Now, a Game Boy DS was much more advanced than the black and white colored little box I had in second grade. It had internet. It had messaging services. It had access to a whole community of other peers. And so by that point, my parents had developed new rules around the Game Boy and new restrictions. And there was I'm pretty sure 3 Game Boys between the original and the DS. And so those were happening every 2 years. Parents were having to coming up with new ideas and new new rules to keep up with the technology. And that's really difficult. I think in the same way, 5 to 10 years ago, if you had somebody with a smartphone, you could probably open up their smartphone and tell all the different apps that were on the smartphone, right? You would see the weather, and you would know what it was. You would see maps, and you would know what it was. But now, if you open up your kid's cell phone on an iPhone or an Android, and you looked at it, you probably couldn't even guess what half of those apps mean, right? I mean, there's so many. When a kid hands me their phone for something, half the time I don't even know what all those apps are. And so here's a little quiz. Okay, these were the popular trending apps this week on the iTunes App Store. So does anybody know what this is? It's one of the most popular trending apps this week. I don't know either. It's Storylux. Storylux, it provides you with unique photo and video templates with filters and backdrops that you then go and put to Snapchat and Instagram, which have their own filters and backdrops that you can then post for your friends to see. How about this one? This one is a little bit more old-timey. I actually knew what this one was. It's called Melody. It's a music maker. You can use different instruments. You can have them overlaid on each other. You can sing, and you can create an own song without having to have an instrument, another person, and it will all compile onto itself. And then this one, I bet you can guess the name. It's Kaya or Kia. Maybe, I don't even know. But this one, your kids probably aren't going to have. It's back pain exercises. But, I was trying to find the more difficult ones that might be coming through on the week. Yeah. And so what I'm saying, you see what I'm saying? Like, you look through here, you see these like little symbols. You have no idea what SL is. You have no idea what that is. You have no idea. I mean, like, it's very easy for us to like have these kids with these apps, and we don't even know what's going on. It kind of reminds me of this old scene from I Love Lucy. A little bit of a throwback in here. Can you run that for me, Omar? I thought I had the videos put in the PowerPoint, but they didn't want to compute.
All right, girls. Now, this is your last chance. If one piece of candy gets past you and into the packing room unwrapped, you're fired.
Yes, ma'am.
Let her roll!
Oh, this is easier. Yeah, we can handle this, okay?
All right. I heard somebody, you remember that live? You saw that, the original? Yeah, it's good. I saw that, and it was just too perfect. I think some of the first words out of their mouth are, oh, this isn't too bad. We can handle this. And the last things they say are, we're fighting a losing game. And I thought that was a little too perfect to what it looks like for us parents these days when it comes to technology. And so today, hopefully, we can slow some things down for you. Hopefully, we can remind you of the genuine good and use that we do get out of technology, what it's brought to our lives. Hopefully, we can hear some of the warnings about the dangers that come with the misuse of technology. And then we're going to offer you some strategies to take home with you so that you can make your home a little bit more screen savvy. And, there's not a ton of visitors here today, so you know me. You know I'm not an expert. I'm not the TED Talk guy on parenting and technology. I have a 1-year-old. I have not had to go through the struggle that a lot of you parents of teenagers have. And yet I've worked with your teenagers. I've invested my life in this for the last 5 years. And I've spent this year, I've been to 3 different seminars on the same thing, trying to prepare for something for this, for our church, for our community. And so I don't have all the answers, but hopefully together we can do a little bit of learning, As a church, we felt like it was important to share what we did know with our friends and with our neighbors. So before we get started into the heart of things, let's go ahead and say a quick prayer, and then we can move into the good of technology. Father God, we're grateful for all the things you do for us, Lord. We're grateful that you've given us this creative, beautiful mind that reaches out and that desires to learn and create more, Lord. I think that's part of what makes us being made in your image. Sometimes, Lord, we take what's good and we distort it, and we ruin it, Lord. We ask that you would help us as parents, as grandparents, as people who love to be around children, Lord, that we could help our kids navigate through this maze of technology and this hardship of life that they find, Lord. We want to use what's good for good and resist the evil, God. We ask that you bless this time, this conversation this morning, and hope that we can leave here a little bit more prepared with your wisdom. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right. So let's start off with the good, right? The good. So what are they? What are some of the, you guys, we can talk, it's a small setting. What's some of the good things that we get from technology? Connection. Look at that. That's the first one I thought. Yeah, human connection, it's absolutely huge. How many of you remember when Facebook came out and you could find your old high school friends for the first time and be reunited with them? People who had moved away, people you hadn't talked to in decades, and you could connect with them for the first time, see what they're doing. That's a little bit before my time, but I know that that's been a huge thing of technology as it's updated itself. It's an amazing accomplishment. The fact that I can talk to my parents who live in central Indiana whenever I want to. If I have a question about working on my car, I call my dad. The fact that my brother, who's currently stationed in the Middle East, I was able to message with him back and forth all last week. That is nothing short of a miracle, something that people 100 years ago would have never imagined. And then even better than calling, even better than texting, what we have, you want to guess? Video calling, yeah. FaceTime and Skype and all this stuff. As somebody who spent my engagement 400 miles away from my fiance, that was really nice, right? Me and Delane went to different schools 400 miles apart for 3 years, and we're able to maintain a relationship mostly because of FaceTime, being able to see her face and see her smile and stuff instead of just writing letters back and forth for 3 years. Or the fact that I'm able to call up my daughter's grandparents and have them be able to watch some of her first steps taken, right? There is so much beauty that comes into technology. And because of technology, we don't even have to lose relationships anymore. Now, sometimes that might be a negative. There might be one or two people you could be more than happy to drop off the map, right? But because of this, all it takes is somebody. I can move to England tomorrow, and I can still call you every day and try to keep that connection alive. There's no exact reason why we have to lose touch anymore. The miracle that connection is in technology is huge, and it's absolutely one of the positive things that we have. What about any others? Sorry, say it again. Productivity, yeah. Productivity is a huge one, right? The fact that let's see here. I'll skip ahead because it's on here. Convenience, right? Convenience and productivity is absolutely huge. Frankly, technology makes our lives a whole lot easier. Think about the internet, being able to search and do research on there. GPS. How many of us would be just completely gone without a GPS today? I really enjoy maps and take a little bit of pride in understanding where to go, which way is which way. And yeah, I've had a GPS since I went to college. I bought one with some graduation money because I knew I was moving to Nashville and would be completely lost without a GPS. Electronic calendars, electronic reminders, things that we forget is technology. That is technology. Anybody got a refrigerator at home? Right? That's technology. That is a piece of technology that completely changes your life that you don't even think about at home. You're just very grateful you don't have a cellar downstairs trying to keep cool with salt packed around a ham, right? And so there's so much that we do have. The fact that I have 18 pages of notes here today and I did not have to write them by hand, I could cry. I was so happy, especially because I can't spell and I have terrible grammar, and this helps me consolidate my thoughts just a little bit better. And, as a father of a 1-year-old again, I'm very grateful that I have a sound machine that she can go to sleep, so I can turn around and go to my other piece of technology and watch a war movie at bed with people yelling and screaming, and she sleeps through the night because she's got a little sound machine blocking everything off. Productivity, convenience is huge. Just think about what it would be like to be Amish for a day, to take away a lot of that technology. Imagine... I have a lot of respect for the people who do that because I couldn't do it. My life is too easy. My life is too much more productive when I live it in this way, and so I don't take that route. And I'm glad I don't have to because we have technology. Any others?
My sister lives in Chicago, has a job that's based in Texas, but when my mom needed her in Michigan, all she needed was Wi-Fi. She could go live in Michigan for 3 months with my mom.
Oh, wow, yeah. So...
Yeah,
that's absolutely ties into this convenience. We don't even have to show up at a workplace anymore. Why? Everything you need is on your computer. You can relocate halfway around the world and continue to work in the same ways. Yeah, that's really good. What else? One that I think of, if I can find them back in my notes, is education, right? And that's not me so much saying education in computers being implemented in the classroom. I'm actually not a huge fan of that. I saw I graduated, and the next year, my brothers all got iPads in the classroom, and man, their productivity tanked. But in the sense that how much you can simply learn through technology. That works. Was I being too loud? Yeah, that's a great idea. But yeah, how much you can just learn through technology. In fact, I have a friend, he's kind of an annoying friend, but he's got a good point, is that whenever I ask a question, I was like, I wonder, this, and this. He's like, if only we had some device that could give us any answer we ever wanted. And he's real dramatic about it, every time. It's funny, but every time. And then he Googles it for us, and we figure it out. But we have more knowledge and information at our fingertips than people have ever had in human history at all, right? We know this. We forget about it because if we recognized it more often, we'd be blown away by what we have around us. You know, the largest libraries in the world don't even contain the amount of information that we have in our phones. Although, a little bit of this research for this class talked about, you know, if you're holding a physical book in your hand, you're more likely to retain the information than looking at it through a screen. Just being able to hold a book, feel the pages, you're more likely to be able to find where in a book this comment was made, and you're able to retain it a little bit better because of that. But, you know, thinking about education, I can't help but think of people like Einstein and how much more he could have accomplished in his life if he wasn't running back and forward to libraries the entire time. If he wasn't having to have journals and information imported from Germany over to wherever he was, not Germany per se, but all over the world to where he was to learn it. If he could have just hit a few buttons and learned anything he wanted to learn, how much more he could have done. Or just the thought that like 50 years ago, if you wanted to know how deep the Grand Canyon was, you would go to a library or I guess go to high school and ask one of your teachers, right? And you just pull up your phone, type it out. You don't even have to type it out. Hold a button down and just speak it, and it will speak it back to you. All you have to be able to do is push, like go like this for about 10 seconds, and then talk, and then listen. I mean, that's all it really takes anymore. Does anybody know what this app is? Do you? Yeah, Duolingo. You know, how many of us like just really bombed Spanish in high school and like left it, but then like further years down the line, you're like, oh man, I really wish I knew some Spanish. Like that would be really helpful in my life. Well, I know a ton of our young people who really don't like Spanish class, but love this app. It's called Duolingo, and you can get on there, and it teaches you slowly and in a pretty well-formatted way Spanish, and you can learn. I think it has other. Does it have other languages, or is it just Spanish? Oh, really? Okay. So our cousin Blake, he's studying abroad with Harding next semester here in the fall, and he's going to Europe, and he's trying to get a little Italian down on Duolingo. Man, like just how much opportunity we have through technology to learn and have so much information access. This is crazy. And, you know, if our next generations use this and utilize this and build on this, like, man, there's so much potential for our future, and I look forward to that. Another one that kind of comes to my mind, and this might tie in a little bit with education, is access, just in general, how much access we have to stuff. We have it to knowledge, but think about music and art, things like natural beauties and whatnot. You know, back you know, previous to technology, a lot of this modern technology, if you wanted to see the Mona Lisa, what did you do? You might could have gone to a library and found a book with a picture in it, but like before then, you traveled to France to go see this picture. Now, you know, you got kids seeing it on TV, seeing it on their phones when they're like 4 years old. They can see the Grand Canyon for the first time when they're a baby. They don't have to wait till they're 30 and can finally afford the trip and take that family vacation to be blown away. It's right there in front of their faces when they're little. You know, think about the best music of today, the best music of 100 years ago. You got it. You want it, you got it. There's nothing holding you back. You have access to all of that. And then even developmental things, like planning a trip is easier with this. That's kind of a convenience, productivity thing. Cooking recipes, tutorials, being able to learn how to work on your home, or work on your car. It's all, you know, free to us through the beauty of technology. And here's something I want to talk about is we even have access to each other, right? We have this huge opportunity to be able to come together as a family and track each other. How many of you are aware of Life 360 or familiar with the app Life 360? Do you guys have it? You don't have it, okay. Parents, yeah, okay. Yeah, do you have it? Yeah, nice. You know, and so Life 360 is an incredible app that I remember hearing about it for the first time, and it just like blew my mind how much is available on it. You know, on this app, you download it onto everybody's phone in your family, and then you know where everybody is. It's that easy. You have access to wherever they are all the time. You can draw like a little circle here and say, okay, this is on the map, on the app. Say, okay, this is school, all right? And you can draw a circle around your home and say, okay, this is home. And so when somebody leaves their house, you get a notification. Oh, they've exited the home zone. And then 15 minutes later, oh, they've entered the school zone. So you know, like, oh, they went straight from school to home to school. If it took them 45 minutes to get to school, maybe you want to know where they are. Well, it also tracks where they went for you. On top of things, it tells you how fast they're driving. Tells you if they're on their phone while they're driving. It tells you if they brake too hard. It tells you if they accelerate too hard. It is just this like way complex way to see everything that's going on with your family. And you get notifications about all the time. Alternatively, kids also get to see what you're doing. They see how many times you had to slam on your brakes because you weren't paying attention, how many times you had to accelerate really fast because you were sitting there at a green light on your phone and stuff like that. And this isn't so much a recommendation for Life 360. I think for the families who use it, I have family who uses it, and they really enjoy it, and that's great. I don't think it's necessary for everybody. It is very intense. I think there's something to be said about allowing a little bit of freedom and privacy in raising your kids. But I also know people who have had kids who have had, very real issues, sometimes legal issues, being around bad people, and they implement this to kind of keep a better track over their family's lives as they're getting through a rough patch, right? And that's the other thing is you can mark zones like school, your friend's house, home, and they'll let you know when you're to and from there. You can also mark like zones you don't want them to be at. Like you got Billy's friend over here who's just a bad influence. Like, Billy, you're not allowed to go hang out with him. You mark that, and if they go there, if they enter in like a 100-yard radius of their house, you get a notification that they drove by there. And so there's a ton of stuff there. The main point here, if that's helpful for your family, great. If it's not, great. I just was trying to focus on, man, like, there's nothing you can't have access to. You want to know if your kids are using their phone while they're driving and how hard they brake? It's out there, and it's free. So there's just so much to have access out there. And then we talked about convenience. Tech makes our lives easier. There's so much opportunity in what we can do. So, are there any other things that we wanted to cover? Are there any other things that might be the benefits of technology? Yeah. Oh, Snapchat does tracking? Yeah, and we volunteer for that. That is something I'll say about Life 360 that I was going to put a little caveat on is they do data mine. They know, you let them know where your kids are, and they also know where your kids are. But also most of your apps do that probably, sorry. But they all are tracking you and tracking your information and stuff like that. But yeah, Snapchat, if I pulled up a Snapchat right now, there's a map on here, and I can see where most of our youth group kids are because they're on here, and they make a little, not emoji, but an avatar of themselves, and it looks like them, and then you're look, see, this is me, and here's some of our kids, around Dayton. You can zoom in. When they go on vacation, it's really fun because they put them in a little car, and you see them, driving down 75 to get to Florida and stuff like that. It does. And, that's limited to their friends, and that's something we'll talk about later is being careful about who you give access to. Oh, that is, yes. I'm sorry. That is just where their phone is. It's not like a chip in their arm and it's tracking them. If they have their phones on them and they check Snapchat, it updates where they are. So technically, I could be here, check Snapchat. Now it says I'm at the church, and I could go to Indiana tonight, and if I don't look at Snapchat again, which I'm bad at looking at Snapchat, it still says I'm here. So. Yeah. Yeah.
It breaks down some barriers, some tribalism that we've had in the past.
Yeah.
It opens us up to people no matter where they are.
That's a good thought. Kind of a destruction of sometimes bigotry and allowing us to embrace other people from around the world. It's okay, you dress like this, you eat this kind of food, and I can talk to you like a normal person. Yeah, that's a pretty incredible thing. Shrunken the world. I like that phrase. Yeah. Well, just take 30 seconds. Let me see where we are. I'm trying to keep myself a little map here. We're actually ahead of schedule, so never mind. But, actually, yeah, take 30 seconds. The people around you, maybe some family if you came with family, and just talk about some of your favorite aspects of technology, even in your own lives. Maybe it's the GPS. Maybe it's social media, because that, is that connecting aspect. But just share for 30 seconds on what some of your favorite things are with technology, and then we'll move on.
All these
iPhone. Some are only available on Android. But you don't automatically have them. You choose to download them. Like, you have Facebook. Yeah, it's okay. But like, is everything? You don't have Snapchat. Yeah, and that's okay.
I had nothing. I just send a message, and I make a phone call, and I finally take pictures.
And that's pretty good. That's all you need.
That's all I need.
I mean, I think that's all you need.
60 things to just can they just put your name on there?
No, you have to like accept it like on your phone as a hard. You have to allow it on your phone. I'm assuming you can't be hacked by other people and stuff. So it's not just for everyone. It's for I should probably address that. Yeah, medicine itself is a technology. So much of medicine we use, the X-rays, MRIs.
They actually show symptoms. Anytime you have a procedure or surgery, you can literally get online and see what's going to
Yeah.
feed you.
Yeah, absolutely.
What's your name? I can't.
All right. Betty made a good point. She also talked about medicine, right? MRIs, X-ray are all technology that help us live longer and live healthier. Not to mention, like, if you ask me, ibuprofen is a technology. Maybe it's a resource. I don't know. But if you ask me, it's something that we've created and computed through science to better people's lives. I would consider it a technology. Technology doesn't always have to be hardwired. But anyway, and she also was talking about Life 360. Let me point out that if you sign up for Life 360, it's not one big pool where you can see everybody. You would on your own phone access your families and connect your families. So you only get to see your family, and your family can only see you. It's not like I get on there and Roger's also on there and he can see me. It's just your small knit family. So I did want to clarify that. So all this technology, I wanted to put that out there first, that it is a blessing, and I want us to recognize that as we move into the negatives, that we don't just toss out technology, we don't go Amish because there are bad things. But at the same time, something we believe as Christians is that almost all sin is a distorted version of something good that God gave us, right? At least I believe that. You have sex that is something good that God has given us for the confines of a marriage, and taken out of that can be a very dangerous and unhealthy thing. Food is a pleasurable and yet sustainable aspect that God has given us, and when taken too far turns into gluttony. And the examples, they just keep going when you look at that. Technology is an amazing way that human has expressed their image of God. Because there's a lot of things wrapped up in the image of God. One of those things in my mind is creator. God is a creator. He created us, and he's endowed us with creativity and the ability to then go forward and create. And technology is one beautiful, beautiful way that we've done that. But much of technology gets taken too far. It gets taken from being a life-giving thing to a life-stealing element of our lives. And that's what we need to become aware of here. And before we get started on the bad, I do want to point out one more time that, 25, I'm not the 90-year-old saying, oh, video games melt your brain. That's not who I am. I grew up with technology. I love my technology. And yet there is some aspects of technology that we need to address. Technology, a lot of it, the modern technology is some of the smartphones, it's very new. And because it's very new, there hasn't been a lot of research available until recently. It takes a few years of implementing the technology before you get the research on how the technology affects people. It's a longer process. And so a lot of this is very new. It's very fresh. And so please don't see me as someone trying to stir up a crowd. I'm not here to fearmonger. That's not my style. But there's some things, some fresh information that might be a little hard to hear that we need to hear. So there's that. The first thing that I think we look at, and maybe the most obvious one, is time lost. In the family, due to these devices, we've lost a lot of time with each other. The Washington Post reports that teens 13 to 17-year-old spend an average of 9 hours a day online, and that preteens 8 to 12 years old average about 5 hours a day. Now, those were some of the higher numbers I saw, and that's online. That doesn't exactly mean on their phone. That can be done at school. Those were some of the higher numbers that I saw, but there are also some of the more recent numbers. I've seen everywhere from about average of 5 to average of 9 hours a day. And whether you're going to those lowest numbers of 5 or you're going to those highest numbers of 9, that's a lot of time. Imagine your teen gets 7 hours of sleep. Imagine they spend 7 hours at school, and then you throw in 5 to 9 hours online. Man, that day is gone, right? Imagine the amount of memories, the amount of playtime, the amount of family interaction with their friends, just in the 3D world that our kids are missing when they're spending that much time online and on their devices. You know, these games aren't played, the memories aren't made, and it's not a healthy thing. And I think a lot of times we try to come back and answer this like, oh, well, yeah, they're online, they're on their phones while they're doing these things. They're on their phones while they're with their friends. They're on their phones while they're hanging out and playing a game with us before bed. They're on their phones while we're watching a movie together. So like, oh, they're not really missing out on that much. Well, yes, I guess, but how many of you guys, put it this way, when it comes, there's some science behind conversation I want us to cover. How long do you think it takes for a conversation to get past the superficial? 30 minutes. See, it's not that radical. I'm not trying to trick you up. But it's 7 minutes. 7 minutes. And that doesn't seem like that bad, right? It takes 7 minutes on average for a conversation to get past the superficial and into the authentic, into the sincere. But 7 minutes is not a short amount of time either. And for some of our young people, 7 minutes is not, they go less than 7 minutes checking their phones, checking their devices. And when you do that, when you're interrupting that 7 minutes, especially with checking devices, which is an escape out of the conversation, it resets, it restarts. And what we're finding is there's a significant lack of authentic, meaningful conversation, especially in our young people, because they're never getting to that 7 minute mark. Up to 7 minutes, we can cover sports, we can cover the weather, how you're doing, how's your day been, oh, it's good, I'm tired. You know, and we have like that, we have that first 7 minutes of conversation like ready to go, don't we? Like I could talk to somebody for 7 minutes and not even have to like turn my mind on because I know what I'm going to say half the time, right? But I can pass those 7 minutes, but our teens are having a hard time getting past that moment because they check their devices, it kills the momentum, it escapes from the conversation, and then you have to restart. Another surprising research that I found said that if you're having a conversation sitting on a table, even with a phone, and you put a phone on that table, even if that phone is completely turned off, even if it's face down, the conversation will almost never get past the superficial and never get to an authentic level. Because both parties in that conversation are expecting to be interrupted. They're expecting one or both persons to escape from that conversation and to be pulled away to social media, to this world, to conversations with people around the world, and they never get past this. When there's a phone present and visible in a conversation, they never get past the superficial at all. Sitting on a table, that's where that was. Just the mere presence of a phone is sometimes an obstacle to our true connections. I'm going to play real quick a popular video that many of you might have seen. It was out and was circulating a lot through Facebook and other social media, which is ironic because it kind of is not for social media. It doesn't talk highly of social media, and yet that's how it got sent around. Shows you that pros and the cons of social media, right? So you might have seen this, but it's got about 4 minutes worth of conversation that I want us to listen to. Granted, this is just as a TED Talk person. This is everything he says we don't agree with, right? But it's helpful for our discussion to learn and to move forward today. So Omar, will you play this video for us real quick?
We know that engagement with social media and our cell phones releases a chemical called dopamine. That's why when you get a text, it feels good, right? So, we've all had it where you're feeling a little bit down or feeling a bit lonely, and so you send out 10 texts to 10 friends, hi, 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 hi. Because it feels good when you get a response, right? Right? It's why we count the likes. It's why we go back 10 times to see if my Instagram is growing slower. Did I do something wrong? Do they not like me anymore, right? The trauma for young kids to be unfriended, right? Because we know when you get a hit of dopamine, which feels good. It's why we like it. It's why we keep going back to it. Dopamine is the exact same chemical that makes us feel good when we smoke, when we drink, and when we gamble. In other words, it's highly, highly addictive, right? We have age restrictions on smoking, gambling, and alcohol, and we have no age restrictions on social media and cell phones, which is the equivalent of opening up the liquor cabinet and saying to our teenagers, hey, by the way, this adolescence thing, if it gets you down. But that's basically what's happening. That's basically what's happening, right? That's basically what happened. You have an entire generation that has access to an addictive, numbing chemical called dopamine through social media and cell phones as they're going through the high stress of adolescence. Why is this important? Almost every alcoholic discovered alcohol when they were teenagers. When we're very, very young, the only approval we need is the approval of our parents. And as we go through adolescence, we make this transition where we now need the approval of our peers. Very frustrating for our parents, very important for us. It allows us to acculturate outside of our immediate families into the broader tribe, right? It's a highly, highly stressful and anxious period of our lives, and we're supposed to learn to rely on our friends. Some people, quite by accident, discover alcohol and numbing effects of dopamine to help them cope with the stresses and anxieties of adolescence. Unfortunately, that becomes hardwired in their brains, and for the rest of their lives, when they suffer significant stress, they will not turn to a person, they will turn to the bottle. Social stress, financial stress, career stress, that's pretty much the primary reasons why an alcoholic drinks, right? What's happening is, because we're allowing unfettered access to these dopamine-producing devices and media, basically it's becoming hardwired, and what we're seeing is as they grow older, too many kids don't know how to form deep, meaningful relationships. Their words, not mine. They will admit that many of their friendships are superficial. They will admit that their friends, that they don't count on their friends, they don't rely on their friends, they have fun with their friends, but they also know that their friends will cancel on them as something better comes along. Deep, meaningful relationships are not there because they never practice the skill set, and worse, they don't have the coping mechanisms to deal with stress. So when significant stress starts to show up in their lives, they're not turning to a person, they're turning to a device, they're turning to social media, they're turning to these things which offer temporary relief. We know, the science is clear, we know that people who spend more time on Facebook suffer higher rates of depression than people who spend less time on Facebook, right? These things balanced. Alcohol is not bad, too much alcohol is bad. Gambling is fun, too much gambling is dangerous, right? There's nothing wrong with social media and cell phones. It's the imbalance, right? If you're sitting at dinner with your friends and you're texting somebody who's not there, that's a problem. That's an addiction. If you're sitting in a meeting with people you're supposed to be listening to and speaking, and you put your phone on the table, face up or face down, I don't care, that sends a subconscious message to the room that you're just not that important to me right now, right? That's what happens. And the fact that you cannot put it away is because you are addicted, right? If you wake up and you check your phone before you say good morning to your girlfriend, boyfriend, or spouse, you have an addiction. And like all addiction, in time, it'll destroy relationships, it'll cost time, and it'll cost money, and it'll make your life worse.
So, you don't like him?
No, my toes hurt now.
Your what?
My toes hurt.
Toes? Oh, he stepped on your toes? Yeah, he's not my favorite guy. He's like a little aggressive and a little arrogant for me. If you watch this is like a 4-minute clip of a 15-minute long, 20-minute long talk. But I think at the same time, we get this, don't we? We get that, lost my clicker. We get that, that our phones, even though they're meant to bring us together and build these connections, a lot of times they do the opposite. And they harm us and they keep us from building a lot of relationships. It's kind of like this pseudo connection, right? Yes, I can be with you through FaceTime or through text message. I can be with you from halfway across the world. I can be with you from the next town over. I can be with you from my 5th period science class to your 5th period math class. Like, I can be with you. But it's only a shadow of what it truly means to be with someone, right? When you experience these God-given sensations of like smell and touch and presence, that is so much more real and powerful than anything technology can give us through connections. And then when we do that, when we kind of engage in that like shadow connection with somebody, well, a lot of times we're doing it and we're escaping actually being present with the people we're actually with. Does that make sense? So even though this modern technology and these devices are meant to build connections, oftentimes they do more harm than they do good. Does anybody know when the iPhone came out? Anybody want to guess? A little further even. Yeah, good guess though. 2007. 2007. And when the iPhone came out in 2000, I think I messed something up, Omar. Sorry. And when the cell phone came out, when the iPhone came out in 2007, what that means to me is that kids 12 years old and younger have spent their entire lives competing against their parents competing for the parents' attention with the screen, right? Because this isn't a problem just for our teenagers. This is a problem for us, right? I can't be the only one who feels like I've been robbed time with my family and my loved ones because I've wanted to be on a device. My patient, wonderful wife, she calls me on it all the time. I get home from work, especially in the summer when she's home with the baby. I get home from work and I just want to veg out. I want to get on Twitter and scroll through my sports news. I want to watch some TV. And when I'm doing that, it comes at a cost from my wife and my daughter. And I'm no longer present with them. And I'm hurt. I'm not saying I'm intentionally hurting that relationship, but I'm removing myself from building more into that relationship.
But this isn't necessarily a new thing to human nature.
Right.
So if we, the thing from the 50s and 60s, you look at Black American Family, and one of the running jokes at the time was Dad would come home and he'd sit down and he'd open the paper up and
Right.
saw his face. So different technology was the newspaper, but he focused on that
Yes.
time instead of interacting.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this isn't
Yeah, this escapism is
a new thing.
right. This escapism isn't a new thing. I think the methods in which we're doing it are stronger than they've ever been, and maybe even slightly more addictive than they've ever been. And even before that, he talked about alcoholism for a little while. That was a method people used to escape. And yet, this specific instance, I think it's easier and it's more socially acceptable. If I went home and ignored my family for this or that reason, I could get more heat. Then I went home and I was just on my phone the entire time. But I can be on my phone. I read the newspaper and I'm done. I'm on my phone so many times a day. I can pick it up during dinner. I can pick it up while my wife is talking to me. I can pick it up right before my daughter goes to bed. It's just constantly there. And I think, I'm just trying to point out that while these are good things, it also causes a large loss of time in our families. Another aspect is the internal child developmental problems that we can't see. And these are real, and these are we're getting into those scarier things with technology here. For example, look at boredom. You might not know this. I learned this I learned it at a seminar and then through further reading. Boredom wasn't a word until the 1850s. Till around the Civil War. And the French, I think, had it a little bit before then, but it was still in the 19th century that boredom became a word. Before then, we didn't have a word for this insatiable, dull feeling of getting through life when there wasn't anything enjoyable to do or interesting to do. And it's interesting because our world talks about being bored all the time, right? I work with teenagers. I know that they talk about being bored all the time. And yet our world is filled with more distractions and more entertainment than ever before. And so since we have so much at our fingertips, so much to entertain us and to get us through, why do we experience more boredom than maybe any point in history? And then it's my opinion after doing all this research and spending this time on this topic that I think sometimes our devices that we use to relieve boredom oftentimes strengthen our feeling of boredom. Think of the various video games and stuff that you might go through or your kids go through, and they're filled with the most vibrant colors, they're filled with the most detailed graphics and shiny moving things, right, that are meant to encapsulate us, and they do. I mean, how many of your teenagers can spend hours on Fortnite, right? That's probably for some of the boys more than the girls. But there are these things that just can suck them in, and they will spend hours and hours staring at this one thing. And those things, these vibrant colors and these intense graphics, sometimes they're a little brighter and they're a little shinier than the real world around us, right? And so if I can look at Candy Crush all day that has sound and sparks and all this stuff, and then go outside and look out this front door, which of those is going to be more appealing to my senses? It's going to be the screen most of the time. It really does desensitize us from the world around us. Even in my small backyard in Dayton, I think there's a lot of beauty there. But if I sit out there and I spend time, I can see a cardinal fly by. I can see a yellow finch or a blue jay, and then there's that flash of color. But it takes a little bit more effort, it takes a little bit more time, and it's a little quicker, and then it's all over, versus the instant satisfaction of playing these games. And also, just straight up, when we're talking about boredom, and sometimes we're just causing ourselves to allow more boredom by trying to fill that gap. I think that just overconsumption of distraction a lot of times isn't any better than being bored itself, right? It's like eating, junk food when you're not really hungry. You're just continuing to fill it up with nothing that's any better than what was before. It's not actually fixing any problem.
I just want to do a check here. So you did some research on boredom coming into language.
Yeah.
If we look at that time period, wasn't that when we went from, it was a
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, it comes with the leisure of the benefits that we have in life.
Refrigerators and dishwashers and vacuum cleaners, all things that make what took all day.
Yeah. Yeah, you move from work to leisure, right? You know, and the fact the first people who started using the bore was the upper class of that English society. It was the royalty who didn't have to do work, who didn't have to do these things. And yeah, I think my point still stays true. The fact that, like, when we're bored, we dive into something. But all that our technology and our devices we try to use to supplement a lot of our boredom, I think are just causing us to experience boredom slightly more often. I think in part it is due to having less like life-surviving things on our plate. But also, you know, I think, how much free time did some of you older generations have as kids? But you went out and you played with friends, and you had things to do, and you filled that time. Like, our kids are bored at youth group events, they're bored at school, they're bored with their friends. There's just no end to their boredom. Like, it almost like it seems unsatisfied, and I think it's because we've numbed ourselves a little bit in that sense. It's kind of what I'm getting at. But I do see what you're saying, and we can't neglect the fact that, like, a lot of, at least in the initial change to experiencing boredom, was because, like, you didn't have to go fight for your life 24/7. And that's legitimate. Is that kind of what we're saying?
So I guess I'm thinking about this now that you use the leisure description. It's leisure.
I've always thought of leisure as rest that you pay for.
Leisure and those kind of related things in society came about because that opportunity came about.
Right.
As we lessened the need to work.
Yeah.
These things were created, and they took different forms in different time periods. So,
Right.
We've got ones that are more efficient than
Yes.
creating.
Healthier leisure and rest than others. Like, that's what I was trying to reference a little bit with the junk food, right? Overconsumption of just junk media doesn't really help us a lot in curing at least boredom, right? I get what you're saying.
But technology today also, I think, in some cases, causes you to work more.
Yeah.
People can get a hold of you 24/7. There's no such thing as a 9-to-5 job.
Right. You're absolutely right. We're actually going to cover that. So you're thinking ahead of me. But yes, like, we're going to come to that especially when we get to, like, strategies here in a little bit. But yeah, that is a negative that technology causes. There's no escape from the workforce. You know, we talked about, like, oh, you can stay connected to anybody. You never have to lose a relationship. But also, you can't really escape yourself without turning off that switch. And man, that's hard to do. And in a lot of workforces, you can't. You will get in trouble. You'll get fired if you turn off that switch. And was it New York City a couple months back who was instigating a law about, like, you can't punish a worker for not being able to reach out of work hours? Is that strike a bell with anybody? You saw a little bit of that? And I can't speak to that because I don't know too much about it. But, you know, being bored in and of itself isn't exactly a problem. To try and jump back on this train. Being bored in and of itself isn't exactly a bad thing. Being bored can actually be a mental exercise, okay? As a young person, when you're bored, you're actually working a part of your brain. Physiologically, you're stretching a muscle. When you go to school and you do math problems, you're working a muscle in your brain and you're learning. When you do reading stories, you're working a muscle in your brain and you're learning. When you're bored, you're working a muscle in your brain, and it's the muscle that deals with the mundane. Now, that doesn't sound that important. Like, okay, well, my muscle that deals with the boring parts of life isn't strong. I mean, it's boring anyways. How strong does it really have to be, right? But that's the part of your brain that gets you through the mindless work that we see so often in life. And when we relieve our children of boredom 100% of the time, they're robbed of that ability. They're robbed of the ability to get through the mindless work. So, for example, this is a really common practice, and I'm not condemning anybody here, but it's a really common practice. When we have a toddler in the car, we give them a tablet. Yeah? If you're going on a car ride, you give them a tablet, because if you don't, they might kick and scream. They might be mad. They might, who knows what's going to happen if they don't have a distraction. And so you give them a tablet in the car. And it seems pretty innocent in the time, but what's happened is that's a prime opportunity for them to be working that bored muscle, for them to be experiencing just pure boredom without any flashing lights or anything like that. And ultimately, later in life, when they don't develop that part of their brain because they've always had something in front of them, we get kids down the road who aren't able to sit through math lectures. They're not able to fill out their Spanish homework and the vocab, that tedious, busy work at home. And then they get to the workforce, and they're not able to stock shelves and stuff very well because, man, it's boring, and it's mundane, and it's not fun. But they just don't have that mental ability. They've never had to be trained. They've never worked their minds to get through that hard stuff. And so, like I said, I'm not condemning somebody of that, but it might not be as innocent of a practice as we've thought it was. And that's just kind of one small part of these child developmental things that we're just now realizing. One of the more disturbing studies I found is that the earlier kids are exposed to smartphone type technology, they show less capacity in life for empathy later. Like just if the younger they're getting smartphones, they're just for some reason, and I don't have the exact answer, but they're showing less empathy later in life. In fact, there was a study by the University of Michigan that found that in 2010, incoming freshmen on an empathy test they did, I didn't look at the parameters of that, but they found that they showed 40% less empathy than their peers, the people coming into college in 1980, 30 years before. That's empathy. The ability to share emotions for someone else's pain or someone else is going through. Like, if you had a family member die, my ability to like generally grieve with you is being diminished. And we're just seeing that rise and rise and rise. You had your hand up. And even more upsetting, and I think that's huge. Like, that scares me a little bit, that like down the line we're looking at people that don't have as much compassion and empathy down the road. That's a bigger thing than those words really relate. And a more upsetting is the rise of depression and suicide rates in teens. As of 2012, researchers saw a sudden increase in teen suicide rates. And it's really started spiking for this. This is, I didn't write it down. What was that from? I try to make sure all my things were from legitimate resources. But it was different than this, which came from the Center of Disease and Drug Control. Right? Yeah, Centers for Disease and Drug Control. And this chart on the right actually splits it up between ethnic groups as well. But this one said a significant rise in 2012. These are showing from 2006 to 2016, 70%, 77% increase. Do you remember what happened in 2012? The iPhone came out. And I know there's more to that. Let me state that now. I know there's more to that. I know there's more correlations there than the iPhone came out and the suicide rates jumped up. I know there's more there. And yet I think the statistics are strong enough to say that we can't ignore it entirely. Right? I don't think we can ignore that entirely. The correlations are there enough. NPR reported that teens who spend 5 or more hours a day on their phones, I think it was NPR, are 71% more likely to have one risk factor for suicide, regardless of the content that they're viewing. Whether it's Facebook, whether it's cat videos, whether it's a violent video game, they're 71% more likely to have one risk factor for suicide if they spend 5 or more hours a day on their phone. And then Time reported that from 2009 to 2017, teenage depression increased by 70%. That was from Time, and this is from a Journal of Abnormal Psychology that reports the exact same thing. So you see the lines here. The top line is 12 to 17-year-olds, teenagers, and you see that spike. And then 18 to 25-year-olds, and you see that spike. The older generations, they didn't change a whole lot, but you got to imagine, especially in those early years of those smartphone-type technology, of that modern devices, it's not the older generations who are picking it up first. It's those younger generations, and they saw those inclines first. Yes?
Have they ever correlated that percentage with the lack of ability to form meaningful relationships? Don't those two things almost go together?
I never found a study specifically that number-wise put those things together, but you got to assume that that's part of it. A lack of less meaningful relationships, on top of maybe some cyberbullying. And as someone who doesn't suffer from this particular hardship, I hate guessing. Does that make sense? As someone who doesn't suffer with depression, as someone who doesn't suffer with suicidal thoughts, I hate to guess. But the correlations, the numbers are just too strong to ignore that there's a connection between social media and this just diving in to the online world and these increases in depression and suicide rates. There might be, I'm just not aware. I never saw, you see the meaningful, you can get a study that says there's less meaningful relationships amongst teens, and you'll see that in growth. And you'll see studies that say depression and suicide rates with the same line. You could probably overlay them and see the correlation yourself, but I never saw one that put them together personally. But, there's no one is coming out here saying exactly why it is, but the correlation between an increase of use of these devices, an increase of use of social media, and an increased use of depression are out there. And they're all over the place. That guy even referenced it in that video. And he's using completely different research. And so it's just something to recognize that there's unhealthy mental aspects to technology that has been used out of its proper place. Along with these developmental and internal problems, there's some external dangers as well. How many of you know who this is? And I won't keep this up here very long because it freaks me out. So hide your children if you want. Yeah, it is Momo. Who knows who Momo is? That's Momo. Yeah, you don't. Yeah, we'll change it back because that's not fun. Momo. Momo is. Let's see how I can just describe this. Some evil person or group of people, we don't really know, took YouTube videos. All right, YouTube videos. It's not. I'm sorry. This isn't a real person. This is a statue. But they took YouTube videos of children's shows. Daniel Tiger. I think the one specific one that got hit a couple times was Peppa Pig. Daniel Tiger, Peppa Pig, Paw Patrol. I don't even know all of them. But these, because it's a very common practice for parents of young teens, kids. If your teens are watching, it's okay if your teens are watching Daniel Tiger. That's fine. But they take their kids, and in a busy moment when I've got to get dinner on the table and I've got to get some work done, here's my phone, here's my iPad. Pull up YouTube, pull up Peppa Pig, pull up Daniel Tiger, watch an episode on YouTube. Okay? Like we've been watching YouTube clips up here for this whole seminar. And then it rolls for about 2 minutes, just enough time for me to make sure, okay, it's playing, give it to you, and then walk off. Okay? And then about 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes into these videos of these kid shows that kids are watching, usually a lot of times unsupervised, that scary face pops up. Yeah, you switched it for me. I switched it back. That scary face pops up and speaks to the kids and instructs them to turn on the stove when mommy and daddy, and don't tell mommy and daddy. Go get, to find out where daddy keeps his guns, or what are some of the other ones. We don't need to go through. Jump off the tallest part of the playground and see if you can land on your head. Man, it just shakes my nerves. It makes me mad. It makes me scared. And they were on YouTube videos. And this was in the winter. January, February is when a lot of this got found out and reported. Some of you might remember that being on the news, but there are messed up people out there. And you're watching a kid's show that is safe for kids, and those dangers are still there.
What happens, I think, a lot of times is kids get into the phone.
Yeah.
It kind of augments their reality. And in augmenting their reality with what's on that screen.
Right.
Makes them more believable to them that they should do this.
Sure, that's a good point. Well, think about how much learning a kid does. We talked about education, right? Think of how much learning a kid does. They learn that Peppa Pig shares, and they learn to share. A lot of times that's our roles, and hopefully we're contributing to that. But they learn meaningful messages from these cartoons that they then go and follow. And so for that to be immersed and embedded in something like that kind of content, it makes them more susceptible. I think you're absolutely right. There's evil people out in the world doing scary things. Oh yeah, like cinnamon challenge, right? What was one you said? Oh, iPod challenge. I've actually not. Oh, Tide Pod, yes. Tide Pod, or the cinnamon, people choking on it all the time. Let's eat poison. And put it on YouTube. It'll be fun. Yeah, it does. I think augmenting reality is a good term, but it becomes more susceptible. And there's a mob group think that happens even when you're sitting by yourself, because you see hundreds of people doing it online, and it becomes a mob think, and you don't even have to be part of a mob. And so there are scary people out there. I know I don't even have to get into with y'all the fact that there are many sexual predators out there pretending to be teens on social media things. That's old news, and it shouldn't be any less important news for us. But we know that somebody with very malintentions for your children can go pretend to be a kid on social media, and all it takes is them adding a friend request, sending a few messages, and going to meet their new friend, because you don't meet friends on the playground anymore. You meet them, half of them, online. How many of your kids have friends that they only know through a computer? You don't have to raise your hands, I guess, but there's a lot of them. And it's not necessarily bad, but it becomes a little dangerous. I know there was an incident in Springboro a couple years ago where somebody added a bunch of Springboro middle school girls pretending to be a kid, and they found out through some way or another that the Instagram account was fake and it was an adult man, and they were wanting them to meet them for ice cream and stuff. in our community. It's scary.
Another thing is, some of that mob mentality was a good thing because of the ice bucket challenge.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It can be. And I mean, we got to come back and remember this. And that's why I tried to start with the good today. Because, like, man, technology is good. It is a blessing. But like some of these sins, it can be distorted and become something evil. Yeah, Ice Bucket Challenge, that mob mentality, I raised so much money and awareness for ALS. And yet, and then in a different way, it can be like, hey, let's eat poison.
The flip side of the man pretending to be a teenage girl
Yeah.
is our kids can get online, set up an account, and say, I'm 19.
Right.
So these men who are communicating with them, they're under the impression that this child is 19 years old.
When they could be a minor, yeah.
When they're not.
And get exposed to a lot of illicit content that they don't need to be.
Technically, the men did nothing wrong.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, it works both ways. I mean, we're going to get into some of that in here in a little bit. That's a good point. Another kind of external danger here to talk about is cyberbullying. Cyberbullying is a very real thing. Sometimes we don't pay too much attention to it. But here's a way to think about it like this for me for just a second. When we were growing up, you might not have wanted to go to 6th-period science class because you sat by a bully. There was a kid in 6th-period science class who made fun of you, who picked on you, and it just made that class miserable. So you dread it. You hit like 4th period and 5th period, you're already thinking about it, and you go, and you sit through it, and it's rough, and it's hard, and then you leave the class, and you can kind of move on with your day. I'm not trying to belittle traditional bullying, obviously, but like it's rough and it's hard. And you remember the kind of the dread you would feel and that gut feeling in your stomach knowing you had to go sit through somebody tormenting you for 50 minutes in class. The reason this is so important is because they don't have to wait for a 50-minute class and it's over. They have access, if a cyberbully wants to, they have access to your kid 24/7 right in their pocket, right here. It means that they can be bullied at school by them face-to-face and then go home and receive messages belittling them and stuff at all. Then they can get halfway through dinner and hear like a little ding and they look up their phone and it's "you're ugly," just in the middle of your family dinner. And then they go to bed and they're getting cursed at right before they go to bed. And they wake up to threatening messages first thing in the morning, 24/7. If you have a persistent bully, they have access to your kid and they can reach out as much as they want. You can block a number, but there's nothing stopping that person from creating 12 different Instagram accounts and commenting on your daughter's picture, "You're ugly, you're gross, you should leave, nobody likes you." On 12 different accounts, it could be one person doing all that. And you could block those 12 and then create 12 more. Resistant bullies is very hard to stop. And sadly, they don't even have to face the results of their actions anymore. A bully in school could make fun of you, see your pain, and maybe have a little empathy. They don't have to see the pain they're causing anymore. They can type "you're ugly" and then move about their day and not even have to see the pain that actually brings to somebody. It's really just sad and messed up how much access they have to our kids. And I really do think this is a huge element to the depression and suicide rates. I'd like to think it's not as prevalent as other problems, but it's out there. It's out there. I don't think a teenage girl gets through high school without experiencing it in one degree or another, right? Whether it's just a friend that they're no longer friends with, commenting mean stuff or messaging them mean stuff, or it is a more persistent, evil, wicked person like I've had described. Moving on from this, there is one more external danger that I do want to mention and cover, and that's pornography. Oh no, I didn't hit the little buttons to make it come up individually. But pornography, it's uncomfortable to talk about. Nobody enjoys talking about this. But it's a much bigger problem for our kids than probably any of us really realize. One is because our kids are being exposed. I mean, being exposed at all is a problem, right? But being exposed way too young is a bigger problem. The Huffington Post reports that the average age a person is introduced to pornography is 11. It's a child. That's just extremely messed up. And it's a problem because at this young adolescent state, our children's minds are just starting to begin to wire to develop what is natural and what is good and how the world works. Your mind in this adolescent stage is like trying to figure out how the world works. And if the only education they're getting on sex, the only thing they're learning about sex is through pornography, man, that is dangerous, and that's horrible, because not only are they building false expectations for body images or human interaction at all, to sometimes violence, right? That's what they're developing. This is what normal sex looks like, and they're only learning it from that, and at a really young age. And on top of that, it's addictive. It's addictive. You know, remember that Simon guy? He was talking about how dopamine comes through gambling and drinking and drugs and social media. Well, dopamine also comes in pornography as well. In fact, you know, you get a larger, let me see if I can remember this right. I want to look at my notes one last time. Yeah. Masturbating while watching pornography creates a larger dose of dopamine running through your mind than an injection of heroin. Yeah, you heard that right. Pornography in some ways, and used in some ways, can be more addictive than heroin in and of itself. And then later, and so it's extremely addictive. And there is a large percentage, I don't have the stat on that, I kind of don't want to see it, but you know, the stat of how many teens are addicted to porn would outstand you. And then later in life, people with a porn addiction are more likely or more at risk for divorce, unfaithfulness, lack of sexual interest with their actual partner, less satisfying sex, and more. And like those are legitimate stats that come from an addiction from pornography. Because a lot of times it seems like a selfless crime. Oh, I'm doing this in my own privacy. It's not a problem. The future marriage is on the line a lot of the times. And here's a stat that kind of shows a little bit of the addiction. The green line is a little small. The green bar is teenagers 13 through 17, teenagers. And the orange bar is young adults 18 through 24, okay? This is a percent of people who, on the left, yes, the left bar is a percent of individuals who watch pornography weekly. That number is 28% of teens watch pornography on a weekly basis, and 47% for young adults that watch pornography on a weekly basis. Those aren't small numbers. And then if you switch it to once or twice a month, it jumps up. Teenagers watch pornography once or twice a month, 50% of them. It's 49%. Yeah, 49% of teenagers watch pornography once or twice a month. Young adults, 70%. 70% of young adults watch pornography once or twice a month. You know, I don't know, but that sounds like endemic numbers to me, right? That's prevalent enough to be endemic numbers. And those are growing generations. And it's because they get exposed to it so young, to extremely addictive chemicals and addictive material, and they can't grow out of it. And there was another stat that I don't have in my research, but I believe it was like 70% of, anywhere from 60 to 80, it was really high, said that there's not somebody in teens reported that there wasn't somebody in their lives actively helping them avoid pornography, whether that's getting clean from it or just avoiding it in general. 3/4 of our kids didn't have somebody helping them. And here's what may be worse. This might be one of the worst. I think that's probably the worst one, but here's one that's just as disturbing. The pornography industry doesn't account for the most produced pornography. That doesn't make sense. The pornography industry does not produce the most pornography. Teenagers do. 62% of all teenagers say they've received a nude photograph on their phone from a peer or someone their age. 40% say they have sent a nude photo of themselves. It's 1 in 2. And you know that number is low, right? I mean, teenagers are reporting on a survey. You know there's some guilty teenagers that aren't answering truthfully on that second question. You know that number is low. That is way too much. We really as parents, as grandparents, as people involved in young people's lives, we really have to recognize how prevalent and dangerous this is. Is it a website or a program that's called The New Drug? And it's an active resource to help people overcome pornography because they recognize it as one of the most prevalent drugs in our culture right now. Because our modern day technology, while it makes easy everywhere from everything from refrigerators and working and all these great connections, it's also made sex something that God intended for two people to get to a point in their life to achieve and to have. It's made it easy and everywhere in a way that it really shouldn't be. Now, all these issues, they're really heavy. Some of these are really scary. And like I said, I didn't come here to fearmonger people, but it's information, a lot of it's new, that needs to be shared by people in these roles. And so we're a little behind schedule, but I'm going to give y'all about 30 seconds to share with each other some of the things that might have scared you the most, some of the things that you're most worried about, some things that you might be a problem for your family. Share that with each other, and then we're going to go ahead and go on a 10-minute break, unless anybody wants to talk for like a minute or two. And then we're going to go on a 10-minute break, use the restroom. There's water. Lisa's baked cookies for everybody, and then we'll come back in here and talk about those strategies. I hate leaving us on the bad, but don't leave. We're going to come back, and we're going to figure out some strategies to help make our homes more screen savvy. But take 30 seconds and go ahead and share with each other, and then shuffle out towards the bathrooms and everything. About it. And so we're going to look at 7 different strategies here. And let me just point out before we get started that, there's no one-size-fits-all for forming a screen-savvy home. In fact, 78% of parents say that raising kids today is harder than when it was when they were kids. A lot of you might agree. But the number one reason why they think that is technology. Whether it's monitoring, whether it's just distracting, whatever it is, there's a lot of different aspects of it. They think technology is the number one reason it's harder than normal. And that stat wouldn't be the case if there was a one-size-fits-all answer to this, right? So as we look through this, just recognize that there's more discernment here than there is a formula. You're going to have to figure out, some of these might be helpful to you. Some of these might be like not working in your family whatsoever. But as you move through, just kind of decide what works for you. Maybe it could be a primer to develop a new strategy in your own home. But so much of this is best summed up in 2 ways that I think of, at least in my mind. It's 1, develop healthy rhythms, patterns, habits, whatever you want to call them. I like rhythms of healthy ways to use technology. And then 2, keeping technology in its proper place, all right? If you're using technology all the time, if you're using it to prevent this or that, it might not be in its proper place, and then develop healthy rhythms. So those are good, like little guidelines in even developing your own strategies. So we're going to look at 7 of them. I got 7 effective strategies for doing exactly that. I will say that these aren't my personal strategies. I stole these from somebody else. They're like my adaptation of something that I stole. There's a book here called The Tech-Wise Family. And I went to like 3 seminars. I've read a few books. My number one favorite thing that I've read so far has been this book. It's by a guy named Andy Crouch. He's a journalist turned writer. He's a Christian, and he just has this great research done. It's filled with the Barna Group. Mac likes to quote the Barna Group a lot. It's got really good statistics, especially for Christians and churches. And if you flip through here, you'll see charts, pie graphs, all sorts of great stuff. So, if you're looking for more reading, this is a great way to start. But he has 10 what he calls tech-wise commitments. I'm calling them strategies today, and I'm only doing 7 because I didn't like a few of his. And I've reworded them and messed them around to be mine. The other book that I really liked, if you're wanting more reading, Reclaiming Conversation, The Power of Talk in a Digital Age by Sherry Turkle. I've had a lot of mentors also really enjoy these 2 books. So those are good little tools for you if you want to continue this conversation at home. So with that being said, we're going to go cover 7 of these, and then we'll have, I think we should end pretty close on time here. Number 1, develop character as a family, all right? Develop character as a family. We talked earlier about how easy it is to use our modern devices and how it robs our kids from a lot of opportunities to learn, to grow, to spend time with each other. And I use the term devices very intentionally because I think devices and tools are not the same thing. Back in the day, you had a tool, and you had to develop a skill to learn how to use a tool, right? You didn't just pick up a circular saw and start going at things, right? You had to learn the skill to use the tool. And then when you use the tool, it doesn't accomplish a task for you. It helps you accomplish a task, right? I don't pick up a buzzsaw and boom, I have a shed. It helps me get to building a shed, right? It's a tool to help me develop and do a work. Devices, on the other hand, I think are quite the opposite. Devices take no skill. If a 3-year-old can figure out a device, it doesn't take a lot of skill, right? And devices will do it for you. You press a button, and it plays a movie for you. You press a button, and it calculates out something for you. You speak into the button, and it tells you how far the Grand Canyon is, right? It's a device. It's not a tool. I think those are very different things. Devices on the, that was one of my points here. Families and homes are not places where I think that type of easy everywhere mentality is really supposed to happen. If you ask me, the families are supposed to be greenhouses that promote growth of character. Whether character looks like wisdom, whether it looks like courage, whether it looks like love, that's kind of up to you. But character needs to be developed in the home. And when we create an environment that's everything's easy, everything's given to you, character isn't built. Character is just not built in that way. So the question then becomes, how does tech develop our character? You know, for example, let's look at 2 quick videos here to look at how we can use technology. Because there's some very helpful stuff, and there's not very helpful stuff. So I'll let you try to guess which one might be character building and which one's not. Omar, will you play those for me?
Fine, I'll try.
So, you know, I personally think, at least, Pixar does a great job of, you know, building wisdom and courage in kids. You look at this like short clip from Coco. If you haven't seen that before, you got this intergenerational bonding. You got people sharing and passing down from generations, and music and memories and love. You know, it does a great job building this character we're talking about. Whereas SpongeBob, on the other hand, maybe not as much. Maybe not as much. You know, it's like feeding a kid a healthy, nutritious meal versus like just putting junk food in front of them, right? And it's going to take work as a family to discern which is which. You know, I think that we can use these things as we can use devices, we can use screens as character building, but just we're discerning what's character building and what's not. And I'm not saying you cast out all SpongeBob, right? You know, there's something to be said for some mindless fun. That's expected from time to time. But recognize that needs to be limited, knowing that literally anything else your kid could be doing develops character and produces better adults in the future by doing things other than watching some of this mindless entertainment.
It's not even like you said, here's a nutritious meal versus here's junk food. It's
Yeah.
Here's a nutritious meal versus you're on your own.
Yeah, I mean, they find their own food, and if you send a kid to Walmart, where they come back with Twinkies and Gushers, and they're not coming back with celery, are they? So, sure, yeah, that's a good way to put it. It's a good way to put it. All right, so, you know, that was just, that was develop character as a family. You know, discern that together, and then just find out what's best for your kids' growth. Number 2 is create more than you consume. We've gotten into a bad habit of consuming and never creating. I was actually talking with Betty out here in the lobby about this beforehand. We like it easy, we like it everywhere, and we don't want to put any effort into it. We read online, we listen to music online, you know, we watch movies, but how often do we create? How often are we supplying the entertainment or the media? You know, this is essential for our younger kids, especially the creative side of this. They need creative outlets to further exercise their minds so that they can grow and develop their brains and whatnot. So here's a logical, tangible plan. It's a little more difficult, but you're looking for tangible strategies here. That's why you came. Find the emotional center. So not the center of your home, because that might be your furnace room, but find the emotional center of your home, probably your living room, and fill it with things that reward creativity, relationship, and engagement. And then push the things that don't do that, which are usually going to be devices, to the edges instead. Keep things like games, puzzles, a craft table, some art supplies, instruments, whatever it is, things that encourage these things, and put them in the center of your home, that place where everybody is, and encourage this type of creative engagement. Do your best to make it device-free. Do your best to keep these things that ask very little of you and develop very little in you. Try to keep them off and to the side. That might mean that you move your TV. I know that's a more drastic measure here, but it's an option. It's something that would help. Take your TV and move it from the main center of your home to a smaller room. If you have a living room and like a den, maybe you move it to that den. Maybe you move it to a bedroom. Make it an obstacle to go watch TV. If you create an obstacle to go watch TV, it's going to be more effort for you to go do it. Sure, you're going to go do it, but it's going to challenge you and encourage you to do more of these developmental, creative type things. And I like that line. If it asks little of you, and if it develops a little in you, it doesn't need to be a priority. It might not need to be the center of your home. Like most of us, including myself, have a TV in the center of our home. Number 3, form a rhythm of rest. Our culture, you know, it's left rest straight up behind. I appreciate Lisa's comments earlier that like we can't escape our work because of the devices we have anymore. Our modern technology has pulled all of us back in, and it's cast out this idea of biblical Sabbath. I mean, Have you seen the stats? I don't have them with me, but have you seen the stats of the amount of Americans who haven't taken a vacation in the last year or 2 years because they're afraid they'll lose their position at work, they won't get enough work done? It's bad. It's astronomical how many people do not take their vacation time. And we need to remember that God's idea, the biblical idea of Sabbath, is very important. Us being able to stop and to trust in God's provision for a time, to rest and to recharge our life is so important. I believe that in and of itself, because God tells us to do it, I believe that it's wired into our very nature as adults that we need rest. And if you ask me, technology has been one of the biggest offenders of rest. Like I was saying earlier, they pull us back into our work. They keep us connected to taxing people and situations, And I believe the best answer to finding that rhythm of rest again is letting our devices rest as well. So here's another one of these tangible things you can do. It's another hard one, but it's a step in the right direction. Turn off your devices for 1 hour a day, maybe 1 day a week. Now, I'm not saying obviously you got to have them when you're at work and stuff like that. I know this is more challenging, but it's a commitment you can make to move your home in a more screen savvy way. So that 1 hour isn't that hard as it sounds. Make it dinner. I mean, say if most families, according to some of these studies, I was a little surprised by it. Most families still eat dinner together. If you're spending 40 minutes at the table, you're just asking your kids to put away their phones for 10 minutes before and 10 minutes after. That's an hour right there. Or maybe make that hour the last hour before bed, which we're going to get to here in a little bit. But that allows for more cuddle times, more stories, more engagement, and also it helps you wind down as you're going down to sleep. But take that time and allow your phones to be off. Delaney and I are currently working on the 1 day a week thing. Not very well. Transparent, right? We're thinking Tuesdays. Outside of using my computer in the office for work, working on devotionals, bulletin articles, whatever, and her, being on her computer at home, we try not to be on our phones on social media throughout that day at work. When we get home, we try not to have the TV on. When we're home, we're trying not to get on. Man, I want to see who committed to Purdue football that day, and that might be why I chose not to do Thursday, because I know there's Thursday night football coming up. But Tuesday, we're really trying to keep it off. We have not done it successfully yet, but we found that when we do that, we have better conversations. We enjoy each other a little more. We enjoy our time with Lorelai a little bit more. And so, that might be one of the harder ones, but maybe take that hour a day and see how that goes. The book also recommended 1 week a year. He talked this, Andy Crouch in the book talks about when he goes on vacation, he sets up for any emails to come in. A lot of people do this, right, where you have emails come in while you're on vacation, you have an automatic email sent out saying, hey, I'm on vacation, I'll get back to you as soon as possible. He said, hey, sorry, I'm on vacation, I will never read your email, and he has it directly put into the trash. Because half of the problem about doing that on vacation is you come back and then you have, 200 emails to get through? No, so he puts them in the trash, and he's like, hey, if it's important enough, contact me in a week. And I love that. A lot of us aren't in positions where we can manage that, but I love the idea that if we can let our phones rest so we can develop rest, we're going to find ourselves healthier and happier for it. Number 4, wake up before your devices do and put them to bed before you go to bed. I like this a lot. It ties in really nicely to the last one because sleep is essential to life as much as rest is. And most of us, especially our teens, aren't getting enough of it. Man, I talk to our teens yeah, I was up till 4 o'clock last night. It's like, doing what? What are you doing till 4 a.m.? Playing Fortnite. It's like, and then they're waking up for 9 o'clock to go canoeing with us or something like that. It's not great, and our teens and us aren't getting enough sleep. And it used to be back in the day, right, before any of our time, you went to bed with the sun, and you rose with the sun. When the sun set, you couldn't do anything, so you went to sleep. You could buy expensive candles, you could buy expensive oil, but that cost money, and a lot of people couldn't afford those luxuries. So you went to bed with the sun, and you rose up with the sun. But because of technology, we don't have to do that anymore. Our modern technology is actually destroying our sleeping habits because we can walk in the next room, it's getting too dark, you flip a switch, boom, light, easy and everywhere, right? And in fact, there's actually studies saying that the blued lights from our phones actually stimulate our minds more than even regular fluorescent or whatever kind of light bulbs you might have, that this actually stimulates our mind more. And I know many people, including Delaney and I, who say, oh, well, we like to tone down from the day on our phones, like scroll through the social media. It helps me calm down and go to bed. Well, according to science and physiology, no, it doesn't. And so being able to commit yourself to say it's just 30 minutes before you go to bed and 30 minutes after you wake up. It's going to help. Not to mention, when you're using your phone late at night, it's not a healthy process, right? A tired mind plus modern technology equals bad decisions. That's something we talked about in the problems with our teenagers and the problem of pornography. This is when it's happening. They're going to bed before they do. The phone is going to bed with them and staying and waking up with them, and it's the first thing they do in the morning. It's the last thing they do at night, and it's not really healthy. So the suggestion here is to put your beds, obviously, to put your phones to bed before and after you go to sleep. The last half hour was going to be more soothing without a phone than it ever would have been with it, and it lets your mind calm down as well. I skipped ahead just talking. Lost my place in my notes.
The blue light effect.
Yeah. It's at last 2 hours? Like it stimulates your mind for 2 hours, is that what you're saying? Wow, so I didn't even have that. Andy says that blue light, he's confirming it on one hand, and two, he's saying that stimulation lasts for 2 whole hours. So if you're having problems falling asleep at night, no wonder your phone's literally having problems with that.
The European Union actually requires device manufacturers to provide a way to make the light less blue on your device.
Okay.
Based on the time of day. So you have to build that functionality in if you're going to sell a device in the evening.
That's interesting.
So when it gets to the evening time and everything looks more pinkish red than during the daylight, it can be white or blue.
Okay, I did not know that. And I know that one of the researchers I got that information off of talked about how he personally switches to a yellow version or yellow light for the last hour or two of the day.
Yeah, I was just going to say there's blue light filters, apps, things like that.
Yeah.
On your phone, and I have one that kicks on automatically at 9 p.m.
Nice. See, and that's a great way to manage that. Is having the black background and the white letters instead of white background and black letters, is that what that is too? Does anybody know? I didn't look into that. But I know a lot of our kids do that too. It just produces a little less light. But it's interesting. And so, we kind of, it sounds like we kind of get the idea of putting it to bed before us. We can have more time with our families, more time with our kids. It's going to be helpful for our sleep patterns and so on. How about waking up and not letting the first thing you do be check your phone? That might be a bigger challenge, right? Because I know that's what I want to do. I mean, and most of us, because a lot of times it's work, right? It's emails, it's text messages, and you got to get to them. But man, if you can provide yourself just one activity before you check your phone, it could be a shower. Just go to the shower before you check your phone. Stretch. Go make coffee. Prayer. Yep. Any of these things. Yeah, I actually have that here is just thank God that you're alive for another day. Like, take the time to pause and create a little moment, especially for you and between you and God, before you dive into your phones. It's all going to be there 15 minutes later. It's all going to be there half hour later. But create that space a little bit. And so here's a step further, okay? Don't just put your bed to phone before you do. Give it its own bedroom, okay? Give your phone its own bedroom. Find a place to put your phone that isn't by your bed. It's not by your room. One, because I heard this a long time ago, and I don't want to repeat it too much because I never checked it, but I've heard that this thing emits a lot of waves and chemicals. Have you ever seen the thing where you put 3 phones together and a piece of popcorn in the middle and you call it and it pops? This doesn't need to be by your head for 8 hours a day, right? That's not healthy if you're sitting. But I know so many teens that put it under their pillows, and I cringe because one, I don't think that's healthy. But two, we were talking about this pornography, and this is a very real way to separate our kids from that in a logical sense. They're not doing it in the middle of the day. They're doing it late at night after everyone's gone to bed. They can pull out their phones and access this information and these scenes and stuff like that. And so being able to take the phone and having a charging station in the home separate from their bedroom that is away from them is very healthy. I understand that's hard for parents. You want to have access to this for emergencies in the middle of the night. But especially for our kids, they'll fight you on that one. They'll fight you on that one. They'll fight you on a lot of these if you try to make these changes. And everybody I've read who have tried to implement these, some of them are mentors of mine, some of them are the authors and whatnot, they found that, there's a pretty bad withdrawal for our kids and for us. We're not going to be immune to this. But, man, they just experience so much more life with their families afterwards. Yeah. How many of you guys have woken up this week to, a notification or a call or something like that?
I turn it down.
You turn it down? Yeah, I have mine on vibrate, and I sleep through those vibrates. But, yeah. And like, well, the thing you'll hear about is like, but it's my alarm clock. It's like, they sell them for $3 at Walmart. It's not that big of a deal.
So many people don't have a landline anymore either.
Right, yeah.
So, if you're a parent of a teen who's out,
Yeah.
or if you're a child of an elderly parent,
Yeah.
and, you could get a call anytime
Right.
day or night.
Yeah, and I think, adults having this is a little bit more acceptable, because you have those emergency situations. And say you're sending them to bed with a babysitter, maybe you give them their phone, while you're out of town. Or if you got to wake up and go pick up a family member who's having a problem in the middle of the night, you wake up your kid, like, hey, your phone's here. You're going to be safe. I'm going to be gone for 10 minutes. I know that, that kind of stuff has happened. But it's a very practical way to avoid a lot of the dangers out there. Because like I said, that tired mind plus the modern tech is dangerous. And I love teens. I've worked with teens. I'm very confident with teens. But we can't expect them to overcome something that so many adults are struggling with, right? They still have these developing minds. If adults are struggling with it at this rate, why should we make it easier on our teens? So I think that's a practical thing to do is have the phones away from the bed, preferably out of the bedroom when they go to sleep. Number 5. Yeah.
When we go to Winterfest,
Yes.
they, without hesitation, will put their phones in a basket during mealtime and devotion time.
Yep. And they rave about the weekend and the friendships they make and the life that they experience in the 3D world, yeah. And I mean, we anticipated so much fight from that when we were like, okay, we're going to take our kids' phones at dinner times and Devo times this year. We're like, man, we're going to hear it from this kid and this kid and this kid. Not that we name your kids or anything like that, but we just knew it was going to be a problem. And no, we forgot, and they went and got the basket and started collecting each other's phones. It was great. Kids recognize that a lot of this can be painful in their own lives, but there's an addiction there that sometimes keep them from acting on it, and that's where us as parents have to intervene. So number 5, use screens as a purpose together. I think this ties a lot into the very first one, developing character. This is things like, don't just take a phone because you're bored. Whenever you or your kids are in front of a screen, make sure it's for a purpose to develop something good in them. Don't just plop them down in front of a screen because you got to get dinner done or something like that. When you use devices, use them together so that you can create a shared experience to talk about, to interact about. That way it's not just a filler, but it becomes a tool for you to use going forward. The emphasis here that makes it a little different from the first one, if you ask me, is this is goal-oriented. Every time you're using a device, every time you're watching a screen, you have a reason why. I try to do this with my youth ministry because, it's very easy in youth ministry to be like, we're going to go to a Reds game because I need to do something this week, right? No, I think about a Reds game and I think, okay, what is this going to accomplish for me? Well, these kids are going to get to know each other a little better. It's a shared experience and memory that they're going to carry back with them. We're going to discuss this devotional topic when we're there. And we try to use everything we do for a purpose and have a goal in mind. If you can have that kind of mentality when you're using devices and screens in the home, it's going to shape completely differently the way that you use them. You're no longer using them because you're bored and stuff like that. You're using it because, I want my kids to understand the importance of family from this movie, like Coco. Or I want my kids to understand sharing through Peppa Pig, whatever it is. But then talk to your kids about it afterwards. Watch it with them, and then talk about it afterwards so that you continue to drive home that point. And when you do things like that, you're putting technology in its proper place and using it more as a tool than a device. Oh, I got you from Mom. Yeah, you're fine. It's not a big deal. It also keeps you from entertaining your kids with cheap material, right? If you don't want to watch it, how many times do you put your kids in front of something that you wouldn't watch because it's just not good. It's not quality stuff. It keeps you from doing that if you have to sit through that with them and so on. And here's a tangible thing to look at. Every week my phone personally gives me a screen report. How many of you guys get this? Yeah. So if you have an iPhone, I'm sorry I don't have an answer for Androids right now. I didn't get the time to look into this. But just real quick, because I know we're running low on time. If you have an iPhone and you want to look at this with me, even if you understand you get a screen report, it's worth looking at because I found more to it than I knew before. And you go to your front page here and you find this settings, the gear with the settings thing. It's usually on your very front page. You can tap that, scroll down to the second category, and it's a purple box with the hourglass on it. It says screen time. And if you click that, it'll say Houston's iPhone. I bet your Androids have something very similar. And so it says I've been on my phone for 23 minutes today. It says 14 minutes of that have been social network, checking Twitter for sports news. 3 minutes have been games, and 45 seconds has been other. And if I click on that, it'll give me a more detailed report throughout the day, and I can look at the last 7 days as well. I'm averaging 3 hours per day. Not proud of that number. I've actually been tangibly working, because I had this thing with Delaney. I would come home. I told you about this, right? Come home and be on my phone, and she tells me I'm always on my phone. I'm like, you're on your phone just as much as I am. You just tell me when I'm on mine. You like put your phone away and then say, hey, you're on your phone. That's what I thought. And no, she had about like 50 minutes less phone time than I did a day. And so I'm trying to get back down to her number. But it'll tell you, my most used app is Twitter, then Facebook, then text messages, then Google Maps, and a game, right? And it'll tell me how many hours and minutes I've spent on that this week. It'll tell me I picked up my phone 48 times per day on average. And the first used app after picking it up is messaging, text messages, because I'm picking it up because I got it in text, then Facebook, then Twitter. I get about 265 notifications a day. No, about 38 per day, 265 this week. And then it tells me through which 33 of them have been alarm clocks, Bleacher Report, stuff like that. So this is a really helpful tool. It helps you analyze what you're actually doing. Pick up your kid's phone and scroll through that. See how much is like on games, see how much is on messaging systems and so on. But then if you scroll back to the original screen time thing before you clicked on the detailed report, there's options here. Downtime, schedule time away from the screen. So it'll like give you an alarm saying, hey, put your phone down. This is the time you want to be inactive. You can put app limits. So if you see that your kids, I know it's an outdated version, but if you see your kids playing 90 minutes of Candy Crush a day on their app, then go to this orange part where it says app limits, click on it, add a limit, scroll down to find Candy Crush, and then put 45 minutes. Then you cut that time in half. And then when they hit 45 minutes, it's over for the day. There's just all these tools that, like, I don't know about you, but I didn't know these were all on here. Content and privacy restrictions. If you want to use, like, apps that you know are inappropriate. Always allow, like, so if you're going to put, like, limits on there, you might always want to allow text messages and, like, phone calls, right? You don't want to limit, oh, no, I can't get to my phone, right? And so on. So that's a very tangible tool. I hope that's helpful for you. I think that will be one of the easiest things to start implementing is adding some restrictions and downtime on there. Yeah?
Also make sure that when you put the restriction, you put a code that the kids don't know.
Yeah, they have like a password, right? Don't they? They're password restricted. And so don't use the password they use on everything or they'll just click right through that, right? If you send them in with, like when I was a kid, I got sent in with the gas station card all the time and had to put in like the 4-digit code. So I knew that one, not that one. All right, I'm going to try to get through these a little quicker. 2 more. Car time is conversation time. It's a little self-explanatory. We were talking about the tablets with toddlers and how that's not always the best thing. Well, you know, let the time in the car be strictly for conversations. On regular car rides, don't allow the uses of devices in your car. You know, remember our conversation. Remember our conversation on conversations, I guess. It takes 7 minutes to get through the mundane and to get into the authentic conversation. Man, this is, cars are like a crucible for that. Most of the time you're driving, it's going to be more than 7 minutes, right? It's this huge, huge untapped potential to reach your kids and to reach your family. Like, this is the one that struck me the most is like, man, like I really hope I can stay committed to this when my kids get older, that I can like use the car time. And I understand you go on a big trip, you're going to want to use devices, right? Delaney and I drove out to San Diego last year, and I'm sure she was glad she could tone me out with headphones for a little while. But try to stay committed to this. I think this would be very good. And at the same time I say no devices, I think there are communal devices you can use or things you can do, engaging, character-building things. For example, if you have little kids, play those silly songs that teach them things, ABC, you know, on through the CD player or the radio. You can learn with those kind of things. You can sing with them and have a shared experience with them. When they get a little bit older, you can play the license plates game as they're learning the alphabet. Or a license plate is like where the states are, geography, the letters on the street signs to get the alphabet down, and so on. Like, you know, there's a ton of tools there. And I guess neither the music's in the devices, but when I think of teenagers, I think putting on an Audible book or putting on a podcast, even though that's using technology and a device, and not, I would prefer, I think it's great to have old-fashioned car conversation time, but those are things that, once again, a shared experience that you can then engage and talk about. I know when Delaney and I listen to podcasts on the radio, we might come back to that conversation weeks later and be like, man, that nomad living in Maine was crazy from what was it, The Art of Manliness that we listened to that one time, and so on. So there's a little bit of that, but that's, in my mind, that's keeping technology in its proper place. You're using that for a purpose. You're using it together. You're using it to build character. it's just, in my mind, it's a lot of potential for car rides in the family. And then last one, parents get total access. In this current age, man, you're going to get a little shamed for this. If you're a parent who doesn't let their kids have passwords that you don't know, you have access to all their stuff. You can pick up their phone and read through their text messages and their photos, which is what I'm recommending. Like, there'll be other parents out there that's like, man, don't you want your kid to have any privacy? And that's giving kids privacy. Well, giving kids a small amount of privacy is important in building trust and building a family. But, man, there's in my mind, there's too many dangers to have an understanding with your kids where you're not allowed to do that.
One of the things we did when the kids were not only had computers and internet connection
Yeah.
came into the house was to put those in common public spaces.
Yeah.
Facing the room, not the wall.
Right.
So that you could just glance and see what they were doing, what they were into.
Yeah.
And, they wanted them in their rooms, and that didn't happen until they were much older.
Yeah, and I think that's a great practice. I mean, I've heard that multiple times, putting a computer facing the family room. If you have like that stationary desktop, it faces everyone where I can walk by and see what you're doing all the time. Like, there are going to be unhealthy conversations between your kids and other kids. There's dangers out there that we've seen, and being able to have access to that at all times is very important. If you ask me, it's not a place where we need to be like the cool parents. Say it again. Yeah.
But even if you weren't checking it 100% of the time, they knew that accountability point was always there ready to go.
Yeah, exactly. Like, that's a great point. And then I was going to make a comment to that. Kids can, and probably still will if you implement this, delete their stuff. It takes very little time for the kids to delete a conversation that they're having with someone that they know they shouldn't be having. It takes very little time to delete a history on a search bar, delete pictures. I don't have a great answer for that. What I can say that is, if you have these boundaries and you have these expectations, they then know that when they do those things, they're breaking the rules. They're breaking the rules. They're breaking the family trust. They're doing things they're not supposed to be doing. And they know that if they ever get caught on it, they're going to be in a lot of trouble. Versus just letting people move through, letting these young adults who are learning and developing, letting them move through life, just kind of bumping into things with no exact boundaries. I think a kid is much more likely to get into trouble when they think the parents aren't ever going to check versus one who has to go through efforts to disobey. Does that make sense? Yeah.
In school, there's a program called Go Guardian,
Okay.
where I have had friends who were homesick get a notification on their phone that little Johnny's on YouTube instead of on MindPlay. And they can shut him down. And then he comes up to the sub going, my computer's not working. And the teacher at that moment calls into the classroom and goes, let me talk to him.
Yep.
He's like, how did you do that? I've got Go Guardian.
That's pretty good. I've not heard of that one.
On your phone, like within families.
Yeah.
But I know schools can.
So it lets you know what devices or apps they're using?
Exactly what sites they're on. I don't know if it's just connected to the Chromebooks.
Yeah. Like a hardwire thing? Yeah, I don't know. That's really, it's a good that was Go Guardian if you didn't hear that, but that sounds like a very appealing type thing you could use.
And it's funny because Gianni, I said something the other day about computers, and he goes, well, I don't know why that mom just doesn't have Go Guardian, because our teacher knows right where we are.
That you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. Yeah, that is good. That's helpful. I know that I just switched over to AT&T internet the other day, and they had me download an app that was like a home control, and now I can see whose devices are on my internet, and I can kick them off. So that was helpful for the neighbor, right? If he's trying to mooch off my internet. But then if Lorelai grows up, she's supposed to be doing homework and I can't get her off her little play frog, what do they call them? Leapfrog tablet things. It's dead. It's not going to be working now until that homework is done. Or, I'll decide we've been on that a lot this Saturday, and you have that total control. And then until they're 13, you can pretend like it's just, the internet's going out. I don't know. But anyway, I think this is important to have. I know it won't be popular with teens. I know it might not even be popular with your peers, but it's an important thing to have. And then lastly with this, there's no reason if you have a young adult in the house not to have a filter. I think they have a lot of free options out there. Filters are not foolproof. The kids will get around them if they want to. But once again, you're putting more measures in place. You're putting more obstacles in their way. Some of the ones that I've heard of that have gone well are OpenDNS. And K9, like K9 like a dog, K9 web protection. It's actually K, the letter 9, not K9, but it's got like a dog emblem. I've heard those are good. I believe those are both free. In my mind, if you have internet at home, there's no reason not to have a filter to keep. Because that's another thing is one of these studies was saying a lot of these teenagers seek out pornography. A lot of them come across it. I don't know if that's pop-ups. I don't know if they're saying they come across it because they didn't want to put that they seek it out on the survey. But I mean, sometimes it just pops up on like bad sites. I remember as a kid myself, I went to type in like YouTube and I forgot the E, and it was a pornography site. Like right there, I was with my dad and I got in trouble a little bit, but I just forgot the E on YouTube and it was boom, it was there. So.
I don't remember what he said at that conference we had at the high school, but if they want to either Snapchat or Instagram, you can just put in your name and age and it doesn't verify anything. So if you put in you're older, you get all these memes that come up and they could be Pornhub.
Oh.
So if your kid is older than 13, or says he is,
Right.
one of them doesn't
No one's
check,
checking, yeah.
it just pops into their
On Snapchat?
Snapchat or Instagram, I can't remember.
Yeah.
One of them has a hidden photos place that you have to have a code to go in and see photos.
Oh.
That's Snapchat, so parents need to make sure they know the code for
Yeah.
that. Get in there because he wrote bad picture here, So
Right.
he was just saying, kids know all this stuff.
Right, yeah. And we don't, yeah, and that's the other thing.
They know and they
You gotta know that they know more than we know, yeah. And that's something else I'm glad you mentioned that, and I hope y'all heard that, that's helpful. Something I didn't mention on like the parents having total access is like, for example, Snapchat, on a Snapchat you can post a story. I can take a picture of this and be like, hey, hanging out with my church family, and put it on my story, and all my friends can see it. You can have a private story that you only put select friends on. I've known people who like were going out and drinking and partying and left their parents off of that and just did it with their friends who were, participating with them. And their parents got on their phone, pulled up Snapchat, saw there was a whole separate story that they had never seen, that it was separate from the one they get to see, clicked on it, saw that stuff, and it didn't go over so well. So, I mean, like, there's no way to see that unless you're actively looking through their phone and stuff like that.
And I think one of the settings you need to make it everything private because weird people could just say,
Yeah, it's a good idea for your kids on Instagram to have them, like, they have to accept followers and stuff, or it's just being open. I say that, and I think mine's wide open, but try to do that for, like, visiting teens and stuff. So here are the 7 strategies, 7 tech-wise commitments, 7 screen-savvy strategies, whatever you want to call them. Like I said, there's a lot of discernment here. There's no one clear answer. Hopefully some of these will help you. Maybe some of these you're, like, not even interested in. Maybe some of these primed a new idea in you. I would like for us to be able to sit down and share more with each other. I am already 15 minutes over, which I was surprised by. It's hard to gauge 2 hours worth of talking content, by the way. Apparently it's 17 and a half pages. But it'll get in a 53 slide thing. But, just for 5 minutes, is there anything anybody would like to share about things that you have done in your own home? Like Andy, you talked about you kept computers out of the rooms. Is there anything that you think would be beneficial for each other to share? Does anybody have anything they'd like to share?
If somebody sees something on, like if you're friends with somebody's kids, like on FaceTime or something, don't assume the parents are getting all those. Because I have had Andy come to me, Chris and Brooke came to me, and just a comment of, wow, saw what Kate posted on Facebook the other day, and I'm like, I don't get them. She swears she hasn't dropped me. I can go in and look for them and find them. I'm not getting her stuff.
Huh.
So if you see something that another family's child that you care about is saying, is doing, go to that parent and say, hey, I just noticed, little Susie put blah, blah, blah. Are you aware of that?
Yeah.
Because they may not, granted, Kate's 19, there's not a whole lot I can do about stuff. But, she did put something on there one day about, so people at church are feeling the need to tell my mother. And I was like, they care about you.
Yeah.
They didn't mean to rat you out. He simply made a comment to me, assuming I already knew.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a good thing to have. I mean, especially with being in the church here, we're a family. Like, we got to look out for each other. I like to think that as parents, we should look out for parents all over the place, but in here especially. So it's a good thought. Don't assume that if you see a kid doing something or having a social media account that the parent knows about it. Yeah, that's a good thought. I know that can be less fun being like, hey, pretty sure I solved this on your kid's like Instagram story yesterday, but it's good to be in the loop.
There's a corollary to that. We're a big congregation and people put things on Facebook and they sort of have this expectation that everybody saw what they put out there.
Yeah.
And not everybody's spending that kind of time to keep track of what 200 other people are doing. hurt feelings. I'm like, well, I posted it. How come you didn't tell me my whatever?
My seminar today isn't. Right.
I didn't see it. So we get these false expectations about
Yeah.
the interactions with people.
Yeah.
We don't know if they saw it or not. We just assume they did.
Right. Yeah, that's good. It's like I don't know how many times I've been talking to somebody only to go home and find out, one, it was their birthday. Like I didn't know it, right? Because I only get that on Facebook. Or two, like they just been through like a family member dying or something, and I'm over here chatting it up about, whatever. And then half the time I worry thinking like, oh man, they probably thought I saw this and was just ignoring them. But yeah, the assumptions kind of go both ways. Well, we went over, but I really, once again, really appreciate you guys being here and taking the time to better your parenting. And hopefully this did help you, whether you learned some new things that you might need to keep an eye out for, or you got a couple ideas to implement in your home. I hope that's the case. Continue to build this community, to reach out to each other, and we'll continue to serve God the best way we can and glorify Him even with our technology. But two things, just try to develop these healthy rhythms and then keep it in its proper place, and I think that'll help us all. All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and end us in prayer, and then you guys can go to lunch, I guess. Father God, we're grateful for you, Lord. You're a great and beautiful God, and you've given us many, many wonderful things, Lord. We ask that we would continue to take what you've given us and use it for your glory, Lord, instead of using it to serve the devil, God. Sometimes we don't know what the right answer is. Sometimes the problems seem bigger than we can accomplish, Lord, but we know that you're a God who slays giants and that you're a God who provides. We ask that we would continue to turn to you when we're having struggles, and that we would be able to hone your wisdom in our lives, especially with technology. And it's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right. Thank you guys again.